We're live.
Yes,
wow.
we are.
Jen, this is amazing.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Here we go.
We're taking our talks at our cubicle,
Right.
which would be kind of over the cube to one another.
Yes.
And we're turning it into a web series.
Right, right.
Episode 1. So
we go.
much more.
So much more. Because we know that every story that we uncover, there's so much more than what we were able to with the time constraints, et cetera, to be able to put on TV. So
Yeah.
and we have so much fun talking about that, or so much, just
So much to
awareness
say.
and yeah.
Yeah. And this whole idea came about because we're focusing on influencers recently. And everyone has the power to influence in some sort of way.
Right.
And the influencer that we met that spawned all of this is Wallo267.
Yes, his Instagram handle, right?
Oh, Wallo267 is this in-your-face guy with all this good stuff that people need to hear about changing their life, doing better, wanting more out of yourself, and then putting yourself in the driver's seat to the life that you really want.
Right. And we were so jazzed after we met him, which was
Yeah.
interesting because he's so completely different than either one of us, a completely different background, but we just resonated, like we
Yeah.
connected with him. It was impressive. He's a good guy doing a lot of good things.
Yeah. And hopefully you've seen the story. So, the story lays out how he went from, having this criminal past and growing up in North Philly under circumstances that was sort of away in his environment. He grew up seeing certain things, got kind of in with the wrong crowd, if you will, and then just started making some bad decisions. Ultimately, it led him to prison. His first sentence was at 11 years old.
Right, right.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then eventually at 17, he was locked up for 20 years for armed robbery.
Yeah.
So he gets out of prison and turns his whole life around, becomes a influencer that is speaking out on behalf of his story, on behalf of his community, and people are listening. And we went to North Philly. We spent more than 2 hours
Right.
listening to his story. We met his grandma. We're on the street where he grew up. We're out front of the stoop where his brother died in his grandmother's arms.
Right.
We were feeling all of that, and we came back to work, and we were so enlightened and inspired, and we're just going back and forth talking about how amazing this guy is, and that the way that he touched us and what he said in his story ultimately led us to where we are now, to so much more, because honestly, we just wanted to be able to say so much more about this guy.
Yes.
Stuff
yes,
that didn't make the piece that you
right,
saw.
Right. And then as we were talking, we realized that kind of happens frequently. There's somebody, he was definitely exceptional.
Yes.
Which is what sort of inspired this. But it does. There's more to a lot of stories that you just don't,
That you just don't
think
get
it's
to
an
hear.
opportunity. Right, right.
So we've taken a bunch of our footage. We picked certain clips that were really poignant to us.
Right.
And we're going to talk about those today. So you'll get to hear some of the things that were left on the cutting room floor. And some of the things that are left on the cutting room floor are just as important to acknowledge than what makes it in the piece.
Right, right.
So just throwing this out there, in the piece, we're giving you everything. We
Oh,
really
yeah,
are.
yeah,
We are giving
yeah.
you
get
everything.
A complete sense of his story,
Yes.
his experience.
Yes. And we're giving you the meat, right?
Right,
But
right.
here's some of the potatoes
Right.
and the string beans and the
Right,
cooked carrots
right, yes.
on the side that are just as good,
Right.
that make the complete meal.
Yes,
But
yes.
in a newscast, we have to give you the meat.
Right, right.
So, are you hungry, Jen?
Yes, I want more.
Do you want so much more?
So much more.
Awesome. So we told you a little bit about Wallo. Again, first locked up at the age of 11. served a 20-year sentence at the age of 17, got out of prison, changed his life around. Now his voice is exploding in his Instagram, YouTube, and podcasts, and people are listening to him all over the world. So the question is, what were some of the things that he realized that kind of changed the trajectory of his life?
Right.
A lot of what he learned about himself was in prison. So we're going to play a quick bite about Wallo, admitting his past, acknowledging that, owning it, and we felt it was really strong and worth mentioning, and you're going to hear that right now. So
I didn't go to prison. Listen, the police wasn't chasing me. I was chasing the police because I was out here doing stuff that I wasn't supposed to do. And what I was doing is I was drawing attention. Come get me. How you doing? Cop, stop. I'm doing something dumb. Come. I didn't go to prison because, I done what I done. I'm cool with that. You know what I'm saying?
I love how he just throws it all out there.
Yeah. He totally recognizes that he's culpable in all of this, that he played the role that got him there. He just, and as you mentioned earlier, he didn't know a different way, but he's now fully aware that he brought this on himself by the things that he did.
But to piggyback off of that, he's also admitting to himself that he kind of acknowledged he was doing the wrong thing even when he was doing it.
Absolutely. Right. He knew it was wrong.
He knew it was wrong.
No doubt his grandmother told him that was wrong.
Right. And I think what's important to note about Wallo and his circumstance and his story is that feeling resonates with all of us. We know when we're doing something wrong.
Right.
We know how it feels. And sometimes you do the wrong thing for a lot of different reasons, whether it's attention or this and that, whatever. But what I loved about what he said is that he was owning it, and those wrongs were still a part of his story, and now he's making it right.
Right. And he wants to turn it around.
Yeah. And he wants other people to show up and be like, hey, here's what I come with.
Yes.
I'm going to throw it all out on the table.
Right.
And I'm cool with that.
Yes.
This
he talks
is me.
about how it's really important that, maybe not in this clip, but during our conversation, he talked about how it was important that he does have to put that out there. Mistakes and all, out on the table, let people know he was vulnerable, he was stupid.
Right. And here's the thing, we're not... he does have a past. We're not glorifying the past, right?
No.
He's admitted it. He's put it out there.
Right.
But you know what? This is saying, hey, you can change. He's telling people you can change. He is in your face letting you know that however you're living right now doesn't have to be forever.
Right. You can change it now.
Yeah. He says this one thing, and I don't have the clip here, but he says this one thing about life being a journey, which made me just think of his story and where he is now. And then I think about myself in some hard times and other people going through difficult times. Like, life isn't a sentence.
Right. I remember when you talked about that, because he said even whatever your struggle is, he almost viewed it as like a bus ride to someplace else. Like, okay, I'm in it now, but this is not my whole life. This is a journey. It's going to get me to a better place.
And in the piece, he said, even when he was in prison, he didn't make his own bed.
Right.
He was like, I am refusing to make this bed like I live here.
Right.
And one of the amazing things that he was talking about as we had all of that time with him, he was basically saying, like, yeah, sure, he was in prison, but he was also getting an education.
Right.
He was also choosing not to allow his mind to live and be like barricaded.
Right.
Because of where he was.
Right.
He was at that time.
Stay in those cells mentally. Yeah.
No, that's that kind of a mindset, that strength,
that insight that he had. That wisdom, given his circumstances, I mean, he clearly had a rough go from 11 on, and just the fact that he was still able to gather that wisdom and vision is so impressive.
Right. And where he was gathering that from is we got talking about where he was gathering his information.
Right.
And he was saying, all right, well, since I was in prison, every time new inmates were coming in, I was asking them about the life outside.
Right.
And he was taking notes. He was even watching the television and seeing things from all over the world.
And he ended up with a very interesting teacher.
Very interesting teacher.
Yes.
So, see, you might be surprised as well to hear that this was one of Wallo's biggest influencers, if you will, when it came to himself.
Before I got the cell phone, I had got a legal cell phone in prison. But before that happened, one of my greatest teachers, they gave me a lot of information, rest in peace, was Anthony Bourdain. Anthony Bourdain was my teacher because what Anthony Bourdain showed, because we had TVs in jail. And I would watch all his shows, No Reservation, Parts Unknown, The Layover, on Travel Channel and all that. And what he taught me is, this was a guy that used to be addicted to drugs, that came back, was cooking, and he traveled the world. And he showed us the world. So by him showing us the world, the game changed. The game changed. He showed us the world and everything changed. And that was major for me. That was really major for me. When I seen that, it was over.
That was powerful, yeah. I just love that he saw that even, you know, and he talked a little bit too about just kids from his community that just never had a vision beyond maybe their, you know, few block radius, you know.
He
And
refers to
it just-
this is what they see.
Right, right,
In a way, prison became the place that took him even further.
right.
Now
right.
imagine that. Think of that metaphor, right? You have to go to prison to
To
see
see
the
beyond,
world.
right. Yeah, it was fascinating.
Amazing. And he went in deeper too about Anthony Bourdain because he talked about struggling with mental illness and all of these things. And he relates the fact that this guy was struggling too.
Right, right.
This guy's like me. He doesn't have my life. He didn't grow up where I grew up. He had a completely different upbringing than me. But the human feelings that we all feel, that dude is just like me.
Right, right. And so many other people. And again, I think that's why, you know, you may not think it, but there's so many things that he says that a variety of people can connect to because he
Yeah.
touches on so many things, really struggle, any kind,
Right.
how you can look at it, deal with it, change it.
Yeah. He kind of is, he reminds me of like a Rubik's Cube, right? Here's your problem. Here's your cube. And now he's looking at that cube from a totally different way. Instead of picking up that cube and saying, I can't do this.
Right, right. Yeah.
Like sometimes we wallow when Wallo
Right.
just gets up and finds another way.
Right, right.
Like, that's crazy.
Go. Just
That's
do it.
awesome
Yeah.
stuff.
His energy is, it's really, I keep saying it's impressive,
Right,
but
right.
it is.
We got in the truck and we were like, blah, 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 blah.
Right, right.
We couldn't.
Because I just loved the passion that he also has for life now. Like,
Right.
you really feel like he's helped show me how much we take for granted, you know, because he was missing out on so much. He was just like this viewer of life.
Yep.
And then when he was able to get out of prison, he didn't just go through and fall back into his old habits. He was like, nope, I'm taking this and
Yep.
I am transforming what I once was into
Yep.
somebody new.
Yep.
And that was just, I love that. I love that about him.
In the piece that aired in our newscast, he mentions learning about the internet and Google and YouTube. And then when we were there interviewing him, he's looking at his phone, feeling so compelled, looking like he's watching it again for the first time. And he
Right.
goes, I felt like nobody knew about this but me. So imagine years going by. You're in prison. You're only learning about what's coming into you, whether
Right.
it's inmates or the TV. Then you find out about the thing that connects you to the entire world for the first time.
Yeah. He was like, I could see what's going on in Tokyo
Right.
if I want.
That's so cool to look at him as that child
Right.
with such, in that moment, such innocence
Right.
to this big, big world.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And that kind of leads us to our next bite where he talks about the book of life.
Right.
So remember, he's in prison. He's only gathering information of what's coming in and what he's seeing on TV. But here's what he decides to do about that information, or here's what he decides to do with that information. That's really cool. So check this out.
So they'd tell me stuff. Like the first time I heard about things like Google and YouTube, I thought they was lying. I thought people was lying. I'm like, no, it's impossible. So when I got the cell phone, because I had a thing called the Book of Life. So when I got the cell phone.
What was the Book of Life?
The Book of Life was something that I wrote. I wrote all this stuff in there. I write all this stuff. I used to just write things like, somebody would tell me about, like when somebody told me about Google, I would write a paragraph like, Dan, they said, Google, you could do this, you could do it. When I get home, I got to check this out.
The
I love
Book
that.
of Life.
Oh, yeah.
Now imagine, just think
I'm just going to
yourself,
write a book of life.
Yeah. Okay. But, you know, here's what I thought was so cool about that. One, the fact that he was thoughtful enough,
Committed,
saying, I'm going to take this,
Yes.
I'm going to take
He was
that,
on
I'm
a
going to take that.
mission.
And I'm not going to forget what was said to me in this day. And I'm going to write it all down, because what I'm learning today will be something to help me when I get out.
Yes.
Imagine all the things and all the people that you meet in your everyday life.
Right.
Imagine what you're learning if you're open to pay attention.
Absolutely.
Imagine what you're not learning when you're just
Or
on
the people that
grind.
you dismiss, because he makes the point of saying that everybody he comes in contact with is like a library book,
Right.
that he could learn something from every person,
Yep.
take, you know, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and
Yep.
add it to his book of life.
Right. The title, The Book of Life. It had so many layers. It was like the Book of Life. If I think about what that means to me, I look at my own book of life. It has been all the people that I have met that have taught me about who I am. The good circumstances, the bad circumstances, the people that put you down and the people that lift you up. Learning all of those things, all that stuff sticks with you.
Right, right.
And we have the opportunity.
Hopefully it sticks with
Hopefully
you.
it sticks with you. It's true.
Right, because not everybody takes advantage of that or sees it that way.
Right. And that's why I thought that bite was so important to play.
Right.
And when we say bite, we mean
Right, sound bite.
A sound bite.
It's a techie term that we
Yes.
use. We take it for
But
granted,
hey,
but
yeah.
right, right.
And that's why I thought it was so important to play that bite, because imagine if we just saw things through those innocent eyes, kind of taking every day as, wow, this is what I've been given today.
And just he became this student that he realized how important it would be for him if he
Right.
ever wanted to succeed, that he had that level of awareness to know, okay, I need to pay attention, because he mentioned, when people would come in, you know, friends would visit and their relatives or whatever, he didn't care what was happening inside the prison, in the prison. He wanted to know what was going on in the world.
Right.
He was studying very purposely with the intent
Yes.
that he was going somewhere the minute he got out.
He was studying for 20 years.
Yes. Yes.
20 years creating his own books in
Right.
the people that he met.
Yeah. I mean, he doesn't get into that, but you wonder, like, when did that come? Did it develop over time? Were there people that he came in contact
Right.
with? Where did that desire to say, wait, I'm going to turn life around?
Right.
And, you know, where did that fire come from?
Right. So much more, Jen.
So
you
much
want to
more.
know so
I do,
much more.
I do. It's just
right?
fascinating. Yeah.
Well, the last bite that we're going to play here, I mean, I hope everyone can tell, like, we kind of left just being in love with
We
this guy.
We did.
Just his message, his honesty.
Right. And again, not to dismiss what he did
Had
to get
he had
himself into
done.
trouble.
Correct.
But I
Correct.
think he's like this great case of just classic case of redemption. You know,
Yes.
he's somebody that made terrible mistakes, but he's learned from them, and he's got a second chance and sees that and
Yep.
sees the value of that and wants to
Right.
give back to his community,
Yeah.
and do good things and help other people. I mean, there's just
He mentions at one point, this was another bite, I should have thrown this in here, but see, it's all coming
know,
back
I
like
know.
within those 2 hours of spending time with him. He says, I want to give back to my community all that I have taken.
Right. Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's deep.
Right. It's like his, he's atonement for what he's done, and yeah.
So cool. So while we were there, we also asked the question, so what are you in the game for, right? Like, obviously there's a part of you that's doing this maybe for you,
Right.
because you need
Yeah.
to live this message as hard as you're delivering it, right? So I asked him, what are you in the game for? And this is what he said. Another great bite.
Yeah.
I'm in the game to show people, right, that have been through extraordinary struggle in life, whether it was prison, whether it was you didn't handle, you grew up, in a hood, you ain't had nothing, or you went through addiction, you know what I mean? There's a bunch of people that was my friends, there's a bunch of people that was family that went through things. And the things that they went through is things that people go through globally, whether it's addiction, whether incarceration, whether just breakdown, depression, mental illness.
Yeah.
He's laying it all out. And that list could go on and on and on and on. There is so much more he could add to that list.
He just has it's this ability to understand the human spirit and the things that we go through, and I think that's why he's, so many people have seen him. I mean, he blew up. He's only been out of prison 2+ years at this point, but he's gotten eyeballs of celebrities and. So many people, we've seen them, you see the comments, people are like, thank you. I mean, he's really just has the power to resonate with so many people, because whether you grew up in his neighborhood or you're affluent and had, great circumstances growing up, you're still going to face struggles. And he just breaks that down so simply and is like, he mentioned that he wants to leave a blueprint for people to know how to do it,
and doing it means owning it, owning your story, and then putting in the work,
right,
because not all of this came to him by just staying in the prison that was his mind,
right.
He had to work 20 years in prison to learn what was on the outside, then transition to the outside world.
Yes. Yeah.
And put that book of life into play like a playbook.
Right.
And look at what it's done for him.
Yeah.
Amazing things.
And hopefully he'll keep doing amazing things and impacting people in positive ways. It'll be great to
Absolutely.
see his continued growth.
And as you hopefully have heard during this whole webisode, is that you can learn something from anyone if you're open to listening. And why Wallo's message resonates with so many people globally and dealing with so many different things, struggles, issues, circumstances. He's just basically being honest. Like, life is hard for every single one of us. But at the end of the day, you have to put you first. You have to be you. You have to accept you. You have to accept what you've done, where you've come from, and you have to decide where you are going.
And put in the work that it takes to get there.
Exactly. Wallo267. Who'd have thunk it? He surprised us so many times.
He really did.
Even when we went to North Philly and we were hanging out with his family.
Yes.
Even the neighborhood surprised us.
It did. It was not nice. There's trash everywhere. Some homes looked abandoned. And then...
But then we go there and we had such a nice time.
It was...
Remember that neighbor? There was a neighbor that came out with a bouquet of flowers, and he goes, I bet you never thought you'd come to North Philly and leave with a bouquet of flowers.
And we certainly didn't. No. It was really great. And he touched on that a little too during our conversation. He just said that he sees what other people aren't capable of seeing in that community, because he sees the love and the caring and the connection, which is in every community.
Right.
And that,
He basically said, my area is where the magic happens.
Right.
And he uses this illustration where he talks about this great tree, right? And he says, us here, down here, we're the roots.
Right, right.
This is where we're going through stuff, but this is also where people rise.
Right.
He is the rose that stems from the concrete.
Yeah.
I mean, he also took that from a rap song.
Yeah,
I think it was Tupac.
yeah,
But I knew
right.
what he was saying.
No, yes, absolutely.
You know, you got
Yes,
it. You got
yeah.
his message.
And his hope is that he can inspire more kids
right.
to take the right path and,
Yeah.
and succeed too. You know, that's great that he wants to see other people do
Right,
well.
right.
And that's a beautiful thing. That's
Yeah.
a beautiful thing.
Well, we hope all of you maybe take something from our conversation. Again, this So Much More webisode is just about giving you more observations,
Right.
giving you a little bit more to the story, and some details that hopefully make a difference in your daily life. Hopefully you just maybe use us as a little book, if you will, in your day to just grab something from it and maybe, you know, change what you need to change.
Right.
Or not. Stay the
Not.
same.
Or just keep
Or
doing
just
the
keep doing what you're
fabulous
doing.
stuff you're doing.
Right. But the intention of this is, you know, we're trying to bring you a perspective of the producer, the nuts and bolts, the facts of the story, laying it all out. But also, we're human, and that comes with some feeling.
Right. You can't help it.
You can't help it. So we're
we
trying
couldn't
to
help but be moved by him
Yeah.
and many other people.
Right. And we hope you get something from this. So I'll say tune in to our next webisode.
Where you'll get so much more.
Well, you'll get so much more. Yes. Yes.
Cheers.
Cheers. You know, we poured this coffee
I
and
know, we
drank
never
it.
got to drink it. It's okay. I don't mind it cold.
It's not just a prop. There really is
No, there
coffee in
is
here.
coffee here.
Mm.